How to debunk Mormonism in this many minutes. Mormonism is growing in popularity, and there are tons of Mormon apologists online who I would love to speak to, by the way. So this is an open challenge. If any of you would like to debate me on Mormonism, I would love to hear it. The intention of this video is for you to be able to respond to Mormons when they come to your door. We have created an acronym called DUMPS. So D-U-M-P-S, DUMPS. We'll start with the D and we'll end on the S. They're not in order of importance, but the last one is awful, so stay tuned to the end. The first is decoding hieroglyphs. So Joseph Smith comes along and he claims to be a prophet from God. He claims to have these golden tablets on which are written an updated, a revised, a restored gospel. Joseph Smith purchased this Egyptian facsimile which had hieroglyphics on it, and he claimed that he could read hieroglyphics, and he claimed that this was the book of Abraham, the writings of Joseph when they were in Egypt. He claimed authoritatively as a prophet and in great detail to be able to translate these hieroglyphics. However, these hieroglyphics were kept around, and so when Egyptologists and when papyrologists took a look at these hieroglyphics, they were like, this has nothing to do with Abraham or Joseph. This clearly has to do with some kind of funeral rite and has to do with the god Osiris. So modern Egyptologists took a look at this facsimile and just said, yeah, he completely made this up. This would be like if you had a guy who claimed that he could write Chinese and then tried to impress you in order to sleep with your wife by writing all of that stuff down on a piece of paper and being like, see this Chinese I wrote. And then you took it to an actual Chinese person, they were like, this is complete gibberish, this doesn't make any sense. The U in DUMPS stands for unholy God. There is only one place in the Bible where the promise is made that you can become like God. And that's in Genesis, when the snake turns to Eve and says, eat this fruit, and you will become as God. As Christians, we've always believed that you can share in the glory of God. You want to become one with God, united with God as a husband and a wife are united. The two become one. But of course, Joseph Smith was not a fan of monogamy or monotheism because he believed in a God who was once a sinner. Joseph Smith taught that God was once as we are and that we can become as God is. Now, you can tackle this from two directions. If you're a Christian, you can say, the Bible clearly says that God is holy, set apart, that there is no one like him. The Bible says he's the creator of all things in heaven and on earth. It says that by him, all things were created, through him and for him. But Joseph Smith comes along and says, no, that's not quite right. God is a father, but God the Father also has a father. So our God has a father in another universe, and that God has a father in another universe. And basically, it's an infinite chain of parallel universes in which regular sinful men become exalted through faithfulness and righteousness and church attendance, and they become God of this universe and of the next universe and of the next universe. So God is not holy, distinct, set apart. He's just like every other God before him. He is not the source of goodness, beauty, and truth like the apostles taught. The apostles said God is light, and the fruit of the light is in all that is good and righteous and true. But that is not this God. This God, Yahweh, according to Joseph Smith, was simply a guy. Maybe he worked at Wendy's. Maybe he lived in Utah. He definitely lived in Utah. Maybe he drove a Honda Civic. Maybe when he got home from temple on Sundays, he watched porn. Maybe he smoked weed in his universe. Or maybe in that universe, he was born 100 years ago. Maybe he was a slave owner. Maybe he beat his wife. But because he repented, was faithful, transformed himself through righteous deeds, he was exalted. Him and his wife, and they created all of the souls, the babies in this universe, literally. And you can do the same if you also believe in God. And this brings us to the M in DUMPS, which stands for monotheism.
What's the definition of monotheism?
Monotheism, mono, so one, theism, so God. So one God.
Christianity believes in one God, but three persons.
Yeah, God is one, but in the same way that you could take an object and you could view it from the side or from the top or from the other side, in which case you'd be viewing it from three different dimensions, and from the side it would look like a rectangle, but from the top it would look like a circle, and still the object is one in substance. In that same way, God is three and yet one. The apostles refer to Christ as the image of the invisible God.
But Joseph Smith would say that there are multiple gods.
Well, this is the problem, is that for us, the source of all goodness, beauty, truth is the nature of God himself. And to say that Christ is the image of God is to say that he's the logos, the identity of God. He is literally, in and of himself, the point of the universe. He doesn't invent a point for the universe. He doesn't make up a point for the universe. He is the point of the universe. The glory of God is the point of everything in Christianity. But according to Joseph Smith, you can become not one with God. You can become as God is. You can become God.
At least of your own parallel universe. Which, by the way, does Christianity believe in parallel universes, as a quick side note?
Parallel universes would be cool, but but even if there was a parallel universe, if God is existence itself, if reality and identity depend on the nature of God himself, then even if God did create an alternative universe, he would just be God of that universe as well. So God is the necessary being. He is the basis for epistemology, for ontology, for morality. But in Mormonism, God cannot be that because God is just a reflection of the God before him who is a reflection of the God before him. So
he's just a basis.
He's a basis for goodness, right? He's not goodness itself. And so in that sense, it would be like if you had a dictionary and every single word in the dictionary was simply defined using another word, and then using another word, and then using another word. Eventually, there must be some word that refers to an actual thing outside the dictionary. In that same way, in order for goodness itself to exist, it must refer to something outside of us. Their gods are good. Our God is goodness itself. So goodness in the Mormon conception of everything has no reference. Goodness doesn't mean anything in that universe because it can't. The P stands for prophecy. In order to back up these claims, Joseph Smith had to have some claim to authority. So in order to do this, he claimed that in Genesis 50, after verse 27, there's a prophecy about how a man named Joseph is going to come and be a prophet and all this stuff. Only problem is, there is nothing after Genesis 50:27. Joseph Smith decided to write his own version of the KJV Bible, and he called it the Joseph Smith version. And in this version, he wrote a couple more verses at the end of Genesis 50, and he added a prophecy about himself. And this is so wild because you have 2,300 years of textual evidence of manuscripts, pieces of Genesis that are all over the globe. This is like if you had a group chat from last year and everybody took screenshots of it and sent it to 15 of their closest friends, okay? These scriptures are copied and copied and copied and copied, and you can trace back all the way down to the original. Everybody has a copy. And then Joseph Smith comes along and he says, no, actually every single copy has been corrupted in order to leave out this one prophecy which is actually being fulfilled in me. This would be like, in order to impress somebody else's wife, I said, I'm actually in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, in the extended version. Yeah. And then we sat down to watch the Lord of the Rings extended version, and I whipped out the Lord of the Rings extended Austin Milne version. And it was literally just the Lord of the Rings with a 5-minute iPhone video in a different language cut in at the end of that DVD. It is low-key impressive that Joseph Smith could be so confident in himself that he could just go, Genesis has a prophecy about me. And then they go, well, where is that prophecy? And he goes, oh, actually, it's in the Joseph Smith version of Genesis. And then he writes the Joseph Smith version of Genesis in English and then publishes it and then claims retroactively that he was in a manuscript from 3,000 years ago, which is remarkable. And that brings us to the S in dumps. Oh, this is awful. The S stands for so many wives. This is brutal, guys. It is one thing for the Old Testament to have prophets who are not good people. They're just not. Everyone is a sinner in the Bible. Nobody is good. Nobody's righteous, right? Moses killed a guy. Abraham lies. Noah is a drunk. There are all kinds of sinners in the Bible, okay? But when we get to the New Testament, Christ gives us his Spirit, and he says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control. This man was so clearly awful. Joseph Smith, over the course of his life, had 33 wives. 33. There are girls on OnlyFans who have lower body counts than the prophet of God, Joseph Smith. He began his ministry saying that polygamy is wrong, and by the end of his ministry, he not only said that polygamy was correct, but actually necessary for exaltation. If you don't believe me, just go to LDS.org. Every source for everything I've said in this video is from LDS.org, the official Latter-day Saints website. Just to be clear, this is the craziest 180 on anything ever. This would be like if your pastor got caught watching porn and then turned up the next Sunday and said that God told him that watching porn is okay. And the worst part of all of this is that Joseph Smith ended up taking 11 wives who already were married to other men. And he did this by referring to a divine decree. So he would go to different husbands and wives and he would say, look, God told me that this is necessary for my exaltation and for your exaltation. And there were men, husbands, who were bullied and silenced into allowing their wives to be taken by Joseph Smith. This is not according to me. This is according to LDS.org. Joseph Smith had sex with 11 men's wives. And the stories of these men are really tragic. They're literally just saying, look, I don't know what to do. This makes me really sad. But he's saying that the only way I can have exaltation is if I allow him to sleep with my wife. This is so clearly the behavior of somebody, number one, who does not have the Spirit of God in them, let alone are they a prophet. This is somebody whose motivation is extremely clear. Anybody who slept with 33 people, you would go, okay, you got a bit of a problem. Once you start sleeping with other people's wives, and you're also claiming to start a religion, and you're also claiming that God told you to go sleep with those other guys' wives, and you're also coming out with your own version of the Bible with a prophecy about you that you made up, and you're also claiming to read hieroglyphics when you don't, and you're also claiming that God used to be a sinner from Utah that worked at Wendy's and watched porn in some other universe and somehow became the God of our universe, and that you are going to become God in the next universe, and that if you have sex with me, then our babies will become the souls of the next universe, and maybe our child could be the next Jesus Christ. This guy was clearly an abuser. He was a liar. He was a fraud. This is not just an example of like God's imperfect messenger where God uses, broken sticks to draw straight lines. This is a man who did not have the Spirit of God in him. This is an evil, manipulative liar. And if you're watching this and you're from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I would just say to you, the same temptation that Joseph Smith experienced is the same temptation that was there in the garden, which is the same temptation that we experience every day, which is that the snake comes in and promises us, if you follow me, you can become as God. But Paul the Apostle himself said, if anyone, even an angel, comes to you with a different gospel than the one that I am preaching to you, let him be accursed. So let Joseph Smith be accursed and follow Jesus Christ. So again, just remember those 5 letters, D-U-M-P-S, dumps. Decoding hieroglyphics, unholy God, monotheism, prophecy, and so many wives. An unbelievable number of wives. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. And let me know in the comments down below what your experience has been with, elder so-and-so knocking on your door and sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Like this video and send it to somebody that you think would enjoy this type of content. And I would love to know in the comments down below, how do you deal with the claims of Mormonism? I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace. That was a great video. The YouTube algorithm thinks that you would like this video. Let me know if they nailed it.